That's really cool.
Yeah?
Yep.
You know.
And
A jacket like
my
Grandpa.
father printed this newspaper, literally, and this one, and this one. And that's probably it for this case.
Oh, by the way, you might want to get a picture of my classmates here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
What year?
Which one's you?
1950.
Which
Are
one's
you there?
I'm not in that particular page.
Are you there?
No, I missed the page, I guess.
This is all memories of different things they won, different classes.
But then Grandpa's uniform's in there.
Corner, we're going to see Grandpa's uniform.
Now we're into the pub up here.
Amara. Come on.
There's one close-up walking behind the bar. Take a picture of that. In there.
The red shorts.
That's my uniform up there, see? Pictures up beside it. The lacrosse stick.
Which uniform is it?
It's his lacrosse uniform, the shorts and the top.
There's one I
See,
walked down,
there's
take
the
a picture
whole
of the shirt.
group. See, they've all got
Photo
those
there.
I will.
same tops on. They got those same bottoms.
Mom, I never knew that they had a
All places to
box.
put the picture of my pub
Mama.
in a pub.
Mom,
I can put down.
Getting ready for the afternoon drive?
Sure, she's trying to take your picture too.
We have dinner for them at 5. Then usually some of the students come out at 6.
Woo! Yay!
See any R in that signature?
What?
Where's the R?
It's right there. It's right there. I see it. I see it.
Like it? Well, I can look up here on something on.
It was, I saw the
Right
first
here,
one.
right here. Right. Okay, I can put 50 down here, right?
Yeah,
How's that?
very good.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, cool guys.
This belongs to Bob Abrams, and he lives in New York.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Like when you get wood, off the ground here, it's all dried out sometimes. Inside.
Hi, sweetie.
hi.
Hi. Making a video. Hi, guys.
Hi. Oh.
Video.
A video.
Sparklers!
Yay!
Hot in the back of me. Well, I suppose I could stand this way for a while.
Ah, this feels good, Mom.
Hello.
Mom, this feels
Hi.
good. Just stand like this and it makes your back so cozy
real
and
fire.
warm.
Like that?
Uh-huh.
Cool.
I hope everybody had a good time tonight and all week.
We're not done.
All these wonderful people, especially this gal here. She's a wonderful people, aren't you?
Do we use that one?
Yeah.
Or that? All the stars out tonight?
Stars are out tonight.
Hey, Grandma.
If they are, we'll make some.
There's not very many.
We'll make some.
There's one.
Are we going to use those?
No, those are to sit on.
Oh, yeah.
Aaron, start with you. I'm going to say, I want you to give a long...
Well, Grammie and Grampa were married when we were about, 20 years old. Who do you know that's 20? You must know a few people that are close to that age.
Mercedes is 18.
Mercedes is 18, so if she were 2 years older, she'd have been 20, right? And when we got married, the first year we were married, we had a little girl. And her name was Sharon Ruth. Have you ever heard anybody speak about our baby named Sharon?
No.
She would really be the oldest one. She was born before your Grammie. We call her the oldest because Sharon passed away when she was 9 months old. And I always get very upset when I say this. Get a little carried away. Even though it's been 62 years since she passed away. It's very sad when somebody dies. And I just wondered, where is she? Where is my baby? And there wasn't any church that could tell me where she was. They would say, and they probably still do say, well, some might say she's with Heavenly Father, but they had no clue of what we know today. Some might say, oh yeah, she's with Heavenly Father, but that's, you know, you won't ever see her again or anything. And I, in my heart, knew that I would have her again someday. I knew that I would see her. And I'll let Grandpa tell you just a little bit about his experience even before we were married, when he was in the military, and then I'll continue on.
Well, thank you, Ian, for that beautiful story, and I know it's going to be a lot more exciting as it is now, later in the next minute or so. I don't think it'll be too exciting, but things I'll tell you, but it might be. I was born basically I was an Episcopalian a long time ago, when I was 12 years old. That's the Church of England, but that's beside the point. My grandmother and grandfather were the same, and their grandfather and their grandmother. However, back when I was in the military, back in 50 years ago or so, I was in a base in Texas, and I took a trip, flew up to Salt Lake City on business. We call business with a ride, and up there. I was in Salt Lake. I said, well, I got to go see what's going on in the Mormon church, because everybody talks about it. Now, mind you, I was only 17, 18 years old, and so what I did, me and my buddy hitchhiked into Salt Lake from the town right outside of the city, and went to saw the Mormon temple there, and we decided we'd like to go in and look it over and see what's going on. So this was during the World War II, and when we went in, and the missionaries, by the way, were all old men, because all the young men had gone to war. So there they were, 50, 60-year-old missionaries in the temple,
Like a Grammie.
and probably like your grandmother,
Oh,
and
right.
they took us all through the temple streets and the sidewalks and the buildings, and I really didn't know what was going on, but I went in another building, and this man says, oh yes, he says, this is Joseph Smith, and he's from New York. Well, New York, you know, he lived in New York for a while, of course, and immediately I said, what, New York? I can't believe that. But anyway, I did, interesting that it happened that way. Well, we were impressed. The young men weren't there, but the old-timers were. So anyway, I was impressed with the whole thing about what was going on, but I forgot about that after I left and went back into my military work, and several years working in my business, and got married. This was 20 years later, maybe 15 years later.
Yeah, that's,
So one day, they called me on the telephone.
no, don't get into that yet.
Okay, I won't get into that yet, because Mother Harford wants to talk about that.
Mother Harford. Anyway, so he belonged to one church, I belonged to another church. And then we went to a third church. And so for many years, I prayed about this baby. And I also had 5 more children. Grammie, and Uncle Gregg, Pam, and Bill, and Sharman. To think of the straight order here. But I always had and prayed all the time, where is she? I need to know the truth about her. And once I was at a friend's house and said something, when I had still first lost her, maybe before I had your grandmother, and I had said something about that I knew I would have her again someday. And this person said, Jean, where did you ever get that idea? Now, that's not so. You just settle down, because she knew I was sad, you know. And I said, well, I just feel it. I just know that someday. So we dropped that subject, and years later, when, like Grandpa was mentioning, several years we decided that we didn't want to go to the third church that I had talked about. anymore, that we decided there was something more to church than what they taught. And we wanted some answers. I wanted to know if they were where the prophets were, because I knew there'd always been prophets in the scriptures. I wanted to know, oh, my mind is drawing a blank. Anyway, I still want to know where she was and so on, and there were other things that I needed to have answered. Oh, I didn't kill like the other churches either, because mostly the kids didn't go to church. They only went to Sunday school, so the parents would be at church and the kids would be over at the Sunday school. And they weren't together and so on and so forth. So we prayed and prayed together that we could find what we considered to be a true church that would have all the things that were necessary. And that's probably when, anyway, the phone rang. And the missionaries had called us before. They used to call on the phone when we were first married. They didn't go door to door. They called on the telephone. And this, I had always said, no, we don't, need to have anything from you Mormons. Because I wasn't interested. Things that I had learned in school about 2 or 3 wives and things like that, I thought, well, I guess not. Well, of course, since then, things have changed considerably. But anyway, Grandpa answered the phone this one particular day, and I was in the other room.
Was this my turn to say something about that?
All right, go ahead. And I said,
Well, anyway,
come on over.
Well, anyway, yes, the telephone rang, was eating dinner. And I picked the phone up, and I says, hello. And he says, we are the not missionaries, they call themselves,
Elders.
oh, they weren't elders either. We are, anyway, there wasn't the elders, I didn't know what it was, but he said, we're from the Mormon church. I said, oh, my gosh, yes, that's right, Mormon church, let's see, 20 years ago, that's right. I was in Salt Lake City. Oh yeah, you guys are pretty good. I says, what's the story? Well, we're here, we want to talk to you people and see if you want to learn more about the Mormon church. I said, well, I was pretty well, thought that was a pretty good story I had read and heard back 20 years ago. Sure, come on over. Well, right then, Gene in the background said, what are you talking to? So anyway, the Mormons missionaries came over to our house, and from there on, they began another whole story. And Gene will continue.
Yes, I said, you told them to come over? You couldn't have. I was very upset. Anyway, they came over. I was very polite, and they talked to us a little bit, and they challenged me to read the Book of Mormon, which they gave to us. And I said, why should I read your book? I haven't even read mine yet, which was the Bible. And they said, well, why don't you start with Isaiah? Now, what you may not know yet is that Isaiah is word for word in one of the books, and I can't tell you which one, in the Book of Mormon. Almost word for word, many of the verses.
And
So
Isaiah is
anyway,
the Bible.
Isaiah's in the Bible,
Yeah.
but so that's why they challenged me to read that, because they knew too that it might touch me. Then we'll see what we can, figure out, because I was ready already. I was right in seventh heaven, which means I was very happy. Then we also had to figure out how we were going to afford to pay tithing, because we already had a big family, and our money went from one month to the other straight out for everything. So once we figured what we could go without and pay tithing, that was another word on the go. And then one day, Grandpa took Rick and maybe Alex and Grammie and Pam for a hike. And they were gone mountain climbing. And they were gone for 2 or 3 days. And the missionaries came over and they asked me how he was doing. And I said, he's doing all right. He's learning. And they said, well, I want to tell you, when he comes down from the mountain, he will say he wants to join the church. And here I go again. When he came down from the mountain, he said, I've decided I want to join the church. He didn't know they said that. Only me. And it was true. So there was the Spirit guiding them on what was going to happen.
Was that Elder Updike or?
Elder Updike
Yeah.
had said that.
Yeah.
So I made a date to be baptized, and I was baptized on September 8th, 1965, 3, somewhere in that vicinity.
65. It wasn't in August?
I'm sorry, it was in August.
Yeah.
Because then the 3 kids who were over 8, Alex, Rick, and Pam, were all baptized
In September.
by Elder Updike in September. And theirs was the 9th, September 9th, I think. I was August 8th. And Elder Jackson was the one who baptized me. And I still keep in touch with him. He lives in Alabama, has about 8 grown kids,
Will we see
probably a
Elder
few
Updike too?
grandkids now. And then we keep in touch with Elder Updike. We've always kept in touch with our missionaries. And then Grampa was baptized in October by the branch president at that time. I can't think, I can picture him, but I can't think of his name right this minute. Stevenson. And he joined the church, and then when Bill got, when I was baptized, and I came up out of the water, and then we sat, and they set me apart to be a member of the church. They used to do it, today I think they do it in 2 different days, but at that time they did it one right after the other. And as soon as they were finished, I just started to sob and sob and sob. I was so happy. And Bill was 5, and he came over, Mom, what's wrong? What's wrong? I said, nothing, I'm just extra happy. But that was the Spirit touching me. And I am still just as happy today, and we've been members for 45 years. Very active.
Are you done?
We've done all kinds of, yes.
We're going to add little things on here. Jean has done very well, and it was a wonderful thing. But being baptized so quickly, I was coming down the mountain, there was a little bit of a thing in between, and that's the missionaries took me down to the mission home one night before we were baptized. And who was the mission president at the time? That was
Manson.
President.
And was that in Boston?
Yeah, the Manson. Manson, yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, he went to his office, and he knew I was looking for a church to join the church and so forth, and he talked to me a little bit. He said, well, you're going to learn something tonight. He says, tonight we have about 500 people here to watch this presentation here. This is at Harvard University. And they're going to be talking, the people are going to be speaking are not members of the church. They're going to speak from the investigators. That's right.
have supper.
Rise up.
I didn't know custom plate was over.
How much you think it cost? $5,000.
Oh,
It's worth it if you're a musician.
You got the Christmas tree coming.
Yeah, see, it's still there.
Hey.
Let's see, growing up. What are some of your memories and funny stories, you and your friends? Did you ever get in trouble?
Well, first of all, my friends, we had a great time of growing up. We grew up on the waterfront in the ocean of the Piscataqua River, and we spent most of our whole life, young life, in boats, small boats, big boats, rowing, playing, diving in the water, swimming. I learned to swim at an early age, and I had a lot of good friends. Next door was Dave Dawson, who's passed away now. Next door was David Byers and Harold and George Berg, all my good friends. We grew up together, and for years we become very proficient in rowing our boats, sailing. We had sailboats. We used to go to the races when we get older, and when I was about 12. And Sundays we'd go down and race the grown-ups, and would beat them. Well, I would beat them because we had a special boat. It was a skiff, and they were not happy with us because our boat was faster. And things like that. We just played in the water. In the wintertime, we did the same thing because the bay where we lived would freeze over with ice about this thick, and it would break up in ice cakes, we call them. And they'd break up, it would jump from one ice cake to the other, and we call them jump on the bucklers, they call them. And once in a while I would miss, he would fall in the water, in ice cold water, and they would drag us out, take us home, and thaw us out. But anyway, that was a lot of fun, and dangerous, really dangerous, and don't you try it. Every night when we were growing up, we'd play games. We'd play running. We'd race to run everywhere. We'd run 4 or 5 miles when we get to be 9 and 10 years old, and 11 years old. We'd do the same thing. We'd play sports, baseball, all day long on Saturday, all day long on Sunday. Should have gone to church, but we just still play baseball. And we were very athletically, and that proved to me to be that when I became in high school and college, I think all the background and being young and running and playing those things helped me be an athlete. So I was.
Awesome.
So forth. Is that enough?
Yeah.
I can tell you other things, but whatever you want.
And so then you got into, you said high school.
Yeah.
And so what were you doing then? Were you still playing on boats?
What's that?
Were you still playing on boats?
Yes, I was still playing on boats, Patrick, but I played on boats for all my life. Yeah. We got in junior high, we still on boats. In high school, we were doing the same thing. We were every night, we were doing basically the same thing for years. With all a group of kids and my friends would always be doing something in the evening, and I say we call running around the Wentworth. It's 8 miles, and we do that once or twice a week, and become very, it's fun. And never got in trouble except once, I can remember.
And what was that? And what was that? Why did you get in trouble?
What was that? Okay. Well, we used to play baseball in this apple orchard. They had so we were about 9, 10 years old, and there's apples in there, but we had made we could play ball, and anyway, it was in the fall, and the apples were falling, and we went and helped ourselves to the man's apples, and he called the police. And so they came down and tried. I don't know why he came down. Why the man called the police? I don't have no idea. He'd eaten the apples all our lives. Mean old guy, I guess. So the nice, friendly cop came down and got all the guys together. But I was up in my bedroom, looking out the window while the policeman was talking to my friends. So he never saw me.
Really?
I watched him, and I heard him a little bit talking and shaking his finger at the boys and so forth. And then the policeman took off and went back to town, and I came down. He never saw me, but I stayed up there and watched. That was my first encounter.
Your first encounter. So did you have other encounters with the law?
No. Yes. Oh dear. She shouldn't ask these questions. Well, I was 10 maybe, had a BB gun. And me and my friend George were over in Maine, across the bridge in Maine, and we're coming back from his uncle's house with a BB gun. He had a BB gun. So we're walking down the highway, and what's he do? He fires this BB gun at this car was going away. I didn't do it, but he did. So he must have hit the car, I guess. I don't know. So anyway, pretty soon come back. The town cop came back and got us and took us to the police station. And anyway, he got our names, wrote it down, and took the gun away from my friend, and told us not to do it again. And then we went home, and nothing happened. And I don't know what happened, but anyway, we were scolded, and that was the only time I got in trouble. But I didn't want it. Somebody else did it.
Mommy.
All right, different course. What is your ancestral background?
Ancestral background, that's interesting. My grandmother and family came from Newfoundland, Canada, and all her sisters and the whole family grew up in Newfoundland, and they came to the United States probably about, I would say about 1905 maybe, something like that. She had 5 sisters, excuse me. They all came together from Newfoundland and settled in the States. The details on how they got over the border and so forth, I don't really know exactly. But the background is that they came from England. They were all from Britain, southern England. They came to, their fathers came to Newfoundland, settled there. They were brothers and so forth. They were Hutchings, and they were fishermen. And there was a story goes that the Hutchings boys jumped ship and came into Newfoundland and started a family and so forth. And the ladies that were there, my grandmother and so forth, I'm not sure if they came from England then or not. I think they did, but we're still checking that out, exactly. One of my grandmothers, they claim, was one of my grandmother, great grandmother. They were supposed to have been an Indian background of the I don't want to call them tribes, but what those people who live in that part of the world. It says it was a certain tribe that I don't know the name of. So I suppose I'm 1/10 Indian, you might say.
Got it.
Something like that.
And then, if you could sum up one word or a few words of your childhood, what would that word be?
I think every boy, if had my child to bring it up, would the world will be better. I really do. Because we had so much fun doing things that were simple. Outdoors mostly. Not many indoor things. We used to listen to the radio a lot. But comparing from my childhood and what they're doing today, I think it's a 1,000% difference. We did a lot of things on our own. I used to hike, we used to play Indians and hide, and it's just a lot of different things. And they're mostly outdoors. We hardly ever stayed home. We were gone every day somewhere. And Saturday and Sunday, you couldn't find us nobody could find us. And when my mother did find us, sometimes she'd come back with a whip. Where you been? But after a while she gave up. We used to row our rowboats all the way down through the ocean. We'd go to these islands that were in the bay. We would claim those islands for our own, and we thought we discovered them, and would give them names. And anyway, it's a lot of fun growing up around the water. It's a lot different than growing up other places like the city. And I thought we were all turned out to be pretty good. One of our friends became a commander in the Navy. One became a famous. Two of them became All-American track, and one was a well-known coach in basketball. So everybody did things like that and became very learned those things as growing up.
And so, what did you become? What would you say you became?
Well, I became a marine engineer. Why not? Marine, water, so forth. And I worked on submarines for a long time, and I worked on ships all over the world. And I guess that was because I was by the ocean, and it kind of grew on me, and I became basically marine-orientated work with the oceans and Navy. I worked for the Department of Defense as a marine engineer, and before that I did some work with nuclear submarines, and I did a lot of test rides on submarines around the sea, and a lot of them went down very, very deep. I can't tell you how deep I went, or they'll shoot me. And it's still a military secret, they say. But good life, and I can tell you one thing: when you go down deep in a submarine, and you go test depth, the whole hull crackles like it's going to collapse. It scares the devil out of you. And don't do it unless you have to.
And you had to.
I had to.
Awesome. So, what made you want to join the Navy?
Join the Navy?
Join the.
I joined the military. I joined
the military.
I joined the Air Force.
Yeah, the Air Force.
Air Corps. Well, when I was 16, the Air Corps came up with a deal where they wanted, the draft was going on during World War II, and they wanted to, I don't know what their reason for, but I joined what they call Air Corps something or other, that I could be an air cadet. And I had to take a test and so forth, and that would save me from the draft, they told me. I didn't have to go in the draft. That was during World War II. So I became a cadet, but I wasn't called for cadet training until I was graduated from high school. My class graduated in 1944, and at that time I still belonged to this reserve. I didn't understand it exactly. And 1944 they called me to go to college to learn more. And I went to 2 different colleges, 1 semester at the University of Vermont, 2 semesters at the University of Maine, and then I went into active duty and with the Air Corps. And I didn't get out until 1947.
And then when did you meet your wife?
What?
When did you meet your wife? In the midst
I met
of
my
all
wife, and that's a good question. I went back to college again to get some more credits, and I happened to be in a small town of Henniker. There's a small college there, and I met her in 1949, the year I went back to school, and I had to do some writings, some typing of a thesis in one of my classes I was taking, and I had nobody to type it. I found out her sister was a typist. So I took this whole things I had written to her, and she typed this 30, 40 page paper up for me. And I noticed there was another sister, Jean, was there in the home. And then somehow or other I thought she was better looking or something. I'm not sure exactly. But anyway, it worked out that I finally met Jean, and we went out on a date a couple times, and that was about it. I really, I almost married her sister, you know. So, but didn't. I married Mary's sister. And Mary was the one I did the typing for me. But.
And what made you fall in love?
What?
What made you fall in love?
Well, I guess it was because we had a lot of fun together. I was playing sports at the time, and she used to follow my sporting. I used to play lacrosse, and she used to go to all lacrosse games. And because I was there, she liked to follow me around the field. And after the games, we'd have some fun. We'd go out, and my other friend would be another dates and so forth, and we'd have small little parties, you know, and do things like that. And I just knew that she was the girl I wanted, and it just came to be that she liked the things I liked. I didn't like the way she cooked eggs and stuff like that, but anyway, we had a lot of fun together, and it just so happened that I think my playing sports brought me in seeing her because she liked sports, and she liked the looks of my legs, she says, but I think that's the way it goes. We had little short pants in those days in lacrosse.
And when and where did you get married?
Where and when? We got married September 6, 1949. And we get married, and we split, you might say. We eloped and went to Portsmouth. And I used to be an Episcopalian, and we went to the Episcopal Church in Portsmouth. And I can't remember the minister's name, but it was supposed to be a secret. That was September 6th. And what happened that day was all my friends found out, and they showed up. But anyway, it was not a secret wedding. My mother showed up too, and I didn't know that either, so they found out. And anyway, eloping didn't work exactly the way it should, but I'm glad my friends were there, and glad my mother was there, and that's how it went.
And so then what? Then you got married, and where did you guys move to?
Well, I was still in college, still getting some credits, and we moved back to Jane's family in Henniker, where the college was, and we got a little small apartment right across right beside their house, and it was great. It worked out fine. So I took some courses while we were living in that little house, and then we moved to another place in Henniker, a big house. We had a whole down floor, and that's when Sharon was born. And Sharon was our first child, and she passed away in March 1950, I think it was. And it wasn't long after that, after she passed away, we found out that Jean was pregnant again for a second child, which happened to be Alex. And that was in 1950. I think she was born in 1950. Yeah. And I guess I got my credits at college, and I went to work at the shipyard in Portsmouth after that, and we moved to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I stayed there for about 20 years, working at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard.
Awesome.
If that makes sense.
It does make sense. You're doing good. You're doing good. So when did you and how did you start to work for the Department of Defense?
Well, it's a long story, in a way. I left high school one summer. In the summertime of 1943 or 4, they were taking high school kids to the shipyard because they needed helpers to work, and they were working summers. They're getting paid a little bit of money. I was getting $5.92 a day, and I worked during the summer at the shipyard and got my summer. In other words, government work then. And I was 16 or something like that. I can't remember. I was a helper. So every summer they would allow us to do that. So I built up little good deals with the government, working those after schools during the war, and so that's why when I get back out of the military, after it was all over, I had all these points of being in the service, plus working for the shipyard as a helper with these older men, and I guess I did a good job. And when I found after the war was over, and everything settled down and my college courses were done, I went back to the shipyard because I had a little background, and they hired me as a Marine worker on submarines, and it worked fine. And I worked for them at the shipyard for about 15 years, and then other jobs came along, and I got got more promotions and so forth, and worked in production engineering for a long time. And then I became, I don't know, I can go on and on. It takes a long time to tell you my whole career in the government, but I suppose I worked with the Department of Defense when I was 14. Yes, I would say.
Wow. And so what was your final, what was your job title?
I was a Marine engineer with the Department of Defense. I worked in two different places. In Japan, I worked with the Military SEAL Command there, and I had odd jobs all over the Far East. Then I was transferred to Southern NATO in Europe, where I worked all over the Mediterranean and Europe and Africa and so forth with that. And I was a Marine engineer, and I fixed big ships, made them work, and became very famous in my work. No, it was a lot of fun.
And so what are some interesting stories from your career? What are some scary stories, fun stories, anything?
I don't know. You get me caught on these things in the middle here. Well, I got to think. Fun stories. I can tell you a good fun story, but it's kind of scary. Pest Island. When I was about 11, 12 years old, Pest Island was called Pest Island, one of the islands where we used to live. And it was kind of mysterious, but we couldn't find out why they call it Pest Island. Well, years ago, hundreds of years ago, they used to put people with these diseases down there that they knew they were going to die, and they'd put them down there, and they would smallpox, I think it was, and they were hundreds of them that would take from the city and take them on the island because they couldn't cure them. They didn't want to spread the germs around, so they all put them in these shacks down there, and they had a doctor, I guess, there with them, and they would die, and they would just a lot of them would bury right there on the island. And the things, years went by, and 25, 30, 40, 50 years went by, and all the buildings fell down, and there was nothing there but trees. And the story was not told well, and nobody talked about it too much because it was a kind of a bad time in the medical field where people were dying. So anyway, we went down there on that island still called Pest Island. But the fun thing about it was that it's not fun. It's kind of not fun really. But there'd be graves there, and my older friends, they were 18 years old. We were probably 12, something like that. They went down there and they dug some of the graves up. And one Halloween, they came back on the boat and they had a skull on the bow of the boat with a lantern in the skull that they had dug up at the Pest Island, and they rowed it down through the river with that, and everybody saw that as the scariest thing you ever saw in your life, you know. And these older boys that shouldn't have done that, but anyway.
But you didn't do it.
Huh? No,
But
I didn't
you
do it.
did
No,
it.
no, I didn't do it. No, I didn't do it. They did. But I knew that's where they got it. They told the story about digging up the grave, you know, and I thought it was kind of, you know, I would never do that. But they did. But Pastor Island was a place we used to do a lot of camping down there. And one day we were coming down there, the older boys were there, we rode down, and they wanted us to go away from the island. They didn't want to see us. So they shot their .22s at us. And one of them bounced off the end of the boat, and we turned around and took off and went back home. That's scary.
I would say so.
That's scary.
So,
Anyway,
yeah.
kid things we did. Kind of weird, but we never dug up any graves. But I did write a long story on that later in the years, and when I was a writer, and I still have it in my files. So if you want to read it someday, I'll show it to you.
I do.
Yeah.
Any other, do you have any favorite stories or interesting stories from working in the foreign countries that you had to?
Oh, I don't know. I have a lot of stories. I guess the one that I told before is when I was good friends with the Sultan, the Prime Minister and King of Bahrain. He and I got to be good friends. But that seemed to be one of the highlights of, I guess. And he told me when he came to Washington, D.C. that he was going to meet me in the hotels down there and have a good time, but he died before he could do it. So anyway, but I had a lot of people like that I met. And you work for Southern NATO, you run into a lot of admirals and stuff that become famous in Washington, but I really can't remember their names too well. But I know that I used to always fly on a private jet sometimes to certain places. We had to go to a place in a hurry. We had to go out the airport, and we'd have our what do they call those small jets? I can't remember the name of them. We'd get one of them zip off to Crete or something like that, or zip off to any place in the Mediterranean in a hurry. And if we had to go back, we'd fly around those a lot. Usually a general would be in charge of the aircraft, or well, maybe somebody else, but we'd just go. Lear jets, you know. And that was fun.
Do you have any?
There was Vietnam that we, after a while, I was one of the last ones to leave Saigon back when that fell. I was the last day there when everything fell apart. I left there on a airplane that flew over to, flew from Vietnam over to the next country, anyway, over there, and was safe, and
What was that like?
scary. It was scary. Everything was happening, and a lot of my friends were trying to get airplanes to fly out, get out, and so forth, and I got on a C, I can't remember the name of the aircraft now. I flew over the next, I'm trying to think of the country next to Vietnam. I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, we flew over there and landed over there safely. And then I flew back. I flew back to Hong Kong, then back to Tokyo, back to my office. About 3 days I was back home. But it was scary. I can't think. Funny, I can't think of the country.
That's okay. So, did you have any missions that that were worthwhile talking about, interesting, that were
Well, a lot of my stuff I did was top secret, but I mean, there's nothing secret now.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Back in those days, the Fleet Ballistic Missile Program was very, very secret. In other words, our submarine that had the rockets on them to send off, they have to have a place to had to have a place to hide. In other words, they had to go in the deep oceans all over the world, and they had to go in places where they wouldn't be detected because of. So we had to find places in the Pacific, Atlantic, everywhere, so we could tell the ballistic missile submarine captains and so forth where to hide their ships in the ocean, like the salinity of the water, the depth of the water, how cold it was, temperatures, and everything. So that was a secret program that we were doing in different places because we had these ships that just kept riding around and taking this data. And that was a very, it was scary, but it was a highly top secret thing. And my ships I used to take care of those ships all the time and make sure that they were doing the job so they can get the information back to the submarine forces so they don't know where to hide their submarines underneath. In other words, you get in high salinity water or cold water in depth, they could go down and they could hide where the enemy may not see the ship because they were in certain areas. They would be kind of camouflaged under the cold water or behind maybe a mountain like this here, you know. So that was that part of it. It was fun. I didn't have to do that myself. I took care of the ships that did it and had to keep that a little top secret. But that was one thing I did.
What other top secret missions did you have?
Oh, I had a lot of them. See, one of the things that my job was, I used to get, because I traveled everywhere, there were certain people, and people don't understand this too well. There's a lot of people who are in, let's say, for example, it's not quite right word, but say CIA, for example. They contact people. They're a bunch of funny people because you got to watch out with what happens. They contact certain people on a slide. You don't even know you're working for them. So they would go and they would talk to say, lieutenant commander of the Navy, right? That lieutenant commander or commander of the Navy would use their information and pass it on to you. You understand?
Yep.
In other words, it's not firsthand. In other words, CIA don't come to me and tap me on the shoulder and say, Bob, will you do this? No, they don't do that. They go through 2 or 3 different people and it gets down to you. And when the information goes back to a person here and here and here. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And so the 1, 2, 3rd person in line would probably pass it on to me, the 4th person. And they would do it very cautiously. They would say, hey Bob, you're going down to a certain place, let me know what's going on, and this and this and this and this and this. That's all right. And so I would be doing things for them, not knowing why. I knew why, but I didn't want to, And so I would look up things and do things and send them information that they would pass on to their person, and finally we get back to who it's supposed to be. 1, 2, 3, probably two twice down the line. So I wasn't first in line. In other words, the top guy in the Secret Service wouldn't say, Bob, do this. No, it didn't happen that way. That's where they do things.
The chain of command.
Yeah.
So you
Scary.
doing surveillance or dropping off secret packages or picking stuff up?
No.
Kind
I can't tell you that. That might shoot me. Yeah. Yes and no. The day in Vietnam was a secret, to me, but I had to, let's don't get into that. That's a long story. I had to drive a car all the way up to Saigon from Vung Tau. That was a secret. That was me. I was trying to save my rear end. Okay. I had an office in Vietnam, right? And it wasn't my office. It was one of our offices. I was on a ship. I came in the last day, and I was told to go to the office in Vietnam and make sure they get out. So I came ashore in Vung Tau, which was off the coast. I found a car, an old army car, and drove it. It was abandoned. Drove it to Saigon. It was about 20 miles up the road. And I saw a bunch of stuff going on, and there was flames, and there was people with guns going off. I get into Saigon and I dropped the car off. I knew where the office was. I went down to the office, and they were gone. They had already got out. So what I did, I went to the airport then. That's when I went to the airport and get a flight over to Thailand. That's what I'm talking about. A flight to Thailand. That was kind of a scary thing. But what was the question again?
No, that was it. Just, you know, what kind of missions did you have, and what were you doing?
You're thinking about doing, you know, going someplace to direct orders to drop some secret thing off. No. A lot of stuff I did was secret, but it wasn't, I didn't personally do it, you know what I mean? One of the big secret programs I was on was an Air Force ship came in from Florida, the ones that track missiles. They track the missiles down in Florida, they used to shoot them off. So that ship came all the way over to Japan, and I had to do some very high sensitive work on that ship while they were going out in the North Pacific, and they were going to shoot and watch the Russians shoot their missiles from Moscow out into the Pacific. See, that's how they shot their missiles. Come from Russia over the Pacific, and this ship had to go over and stand out there secretly to watch the trajectory. And I had to do a lot of electronic work on shore. They had big bubbles on these ships with the radars and so forth and whatever. And they came in and they went out and they would watch the Russian send their missiles out, and they would get the trajectories and see what they were and something like that. You know, that type of thing. Not very exciting, but it was, you know, interesting. I got a commendation from some general in the Air Force for doing it. But that's all.
Oh, that's pretty exciting to me.
Is it?
Yes, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, a bunch of stuff.
And then how did you find yourself going from that into being a writer? Or was there a transition, or have you always felt like you've been a writer?
Well, when I was an engineer, I had to write a lot of stuff. You know, a lot of material. You know, up, and I used to write a lot of stuff. And I thought when I got out and started writing, it was just a second. You know, it was simple to do. So I just started writing, and I like to anyway. Why did I do it? See, I'm trying to figure out why I did it. It's a good question. My mind is, I have a mind who thinks about a lot of things like that, and I just started, everything these things I always thought of, I put on paper. So I decided, well, why not publish this stuff? So I started writing stories and passing them off to the newspapers, and lo and behold, they all took it up and started printing them, you know. And gosh, that's interesting. They actually print my story, you know. So I got one done, I put another one, and then they would call me. They'd say, "Would you put a story about something?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." So they kept going and going and going, and I was getting full pages. I was getting Sunday supplements. I was getting a big story, and they would color. What's going on? How come that's happening? So I guess what happened is it surprised me because it came back and showed me that I was doing something I didn't think I could do. So the other ones that made me go more because they would publish them. I didn't think they would. So I guess I got to be a point where I was like, boy, I'm pretty good. But I don't know. That was crazy. So then I'd write more, and it worked. And I'd get a call from a newspaper and say, "Would you write a story about?" Like one time was with Barcelona, and I wrote. You remember when the Barcelona had the Olympics back in 19? It was that.
Maybe 92.
I wanted to write a story about Barcelona because the Olympics were going to be held there. So I wrote this long 4-page story. And it just happened I had pictures go with it. I sent the pictures in that I took of Barcelona, and it told a big story, and they had 2 pages of it. It was a great story for them. So anyway, just something I never knew I could do, and they piled on the wanted it and made me feel good, and I kept doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked a little about when you first got married, and then let's see, family life. Instead of, we already talked about career, now family life. So you started to have children.
Yeah, I had children. We had when I moved for a permanent job into Portsmouth, we had Alex and Rick, and we lived in Greenland, New Hampshire. And they grew up there, little toddlers. I was working at the shipyard. And then, in fact, when Jean and I first came to Portsmouth, we lived in a trailer. She was pregnant with Alex. And a small trailer, and then we finally got an apartment. And then we had Rick, and we had Alex, and they grew up on a farm. We had an apartment in a farmhouse in Greenland, New Hampshire. And finally, after it was a couple of years we lived there, this friend of ours found a house for us in Maine. It was cheap and so forth, and we moved over to Maine with the 2 kids, over to Kiwi Point. And we grew the family up there in Kiwi Point. And we drove by the house the other day.
And what are some of your favorite memories of having the small children around?
Well, all my kids love to camp and love to hike, and we didn't have much money, so we decided that we were going to do something that would be inexpensive for a family thing. We found out that camping and hiking and mountain climbing was a great, inexpensive way to raise our kids and do things. So we did a lot of camping, a lot of hiking. The older kids, we tried to climb all the mountains in New Hampshire. We did that for about 5 or 6 years. Finally got them all climbed, all the ones that they wanted, the high ones, and it became a hobby with us. Did a lot of outdoor stuff like that, camping, hiking, and Rick became a professional hiker up at the mountains, and that was our life during our growing-up years. Was summertime camping and hiking and fishing, like that.
Let's see, around what time did you find the gospel? When you tell that story.
That was a good question. We were sitting down for dinner one night, the whole family, and the telephone rang, and I said, "I'll get it." And the missionary called and says, "There's the minister of the church and LDS church and so forth, and I don't know if I want to know something about it." And, well, I happened to, when I was in the Air Force, I happened to stop in Salt Lake City one time, flew into the field just north of Salt Lake, I can't remember the name of it, and we flew in there and was going to fly out the next day, so I said, well, I'm going to hitchhike down to Salt Lake City. So I hitchhiked down with another guy to Salt Lake, and I wasn't at the church obviously in those, I was 19, and I went through all the temple grounds, and they showed me the different things, and these old men, there wasn't any young people there because the missionaries were all in the war, right? So there were no 18-year-olds, they're all 90-year-old men in the temple square. So he showed me around the different buildings, and I didn't know much about it. I saw the pictures and this, and so I remember I liked it, I enjoyed it. So anyway, this is back now, we're going back another 10, 12 years, when they get the telephone call, and I said, "Oh, Mormon church, yeah, I remember that." And so I said, "Yeah, why don't you come on over? Invite the missionaries over." Well, if Jean had picked the phone up, she would have clammed it down. So I invited them over, and she didn't know why, and that's how it started. They came in and taught and Jean and family were baptized before I was, and I became a holdoff for about 4 months, 5 months. And finally I said, well, can't have this.
What was your holdup?
I don't know, just stubborn. No reason. I guess I was getting to an area which I was a little afraid of. I didn't really understand what it was, and I guess I was maybe afraid by.
I can pause it. Okay, so if no specific reason except stubbornness was your reason for hold off, then what was the reason to join? What impressed you?
I guess after hearing the Salt Lake, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir play every day in my living room for hours, my dear wife played, and then I finally decided we got to do something about this. So I thought about it more and more and more, and I said, well, this is, and I thought about the church, and I said, well, you know, this is something that's got to be, we got to get this family together. I can't be a holdout. And I studied more and thought more, and with all that music in the background every day, I became a whole Mormon, I guess. So the only way to make this thing work was to, and I felt it was the right thing to do, and I thought the church was true, and I knew it would bring the family together. So I finally fell. Was it the word? I thought it was true, so I said, well, let's do it, and I get baptized. You know, because my dear wife made sure that I understood it more, and it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I did it because I knew it was true, and to keep my family together where I wanted to go it made sense. In the church, I was always going to church when I was a kid, and I knew that was right, and I did it. And I loved it, and I'm glad I did it, because I have lived for 50 years with the church, and I think it's the only way to live, actually.
Would you mind putting you on the spot? But I know that a testimony grows with your entire life, and so would you mind bearing your testimony?
No, wouldn't mind at all. I know that the church is true. I've been in many places in my life, in family affairs that I've known that the Holy Ghost has guided me in my life and guided my family. And if it wasn't for the church, I don't think that my family would be as close as they have been and are. For myself, I feel very uplifted every day. But it takes something you've got to work at, and I do. There's not a day goes by that we and the family, and now my dear wife Jane, we don't have a prayer before we go to bed. Every night we kneel before our bed and we pray with each other. And I kiss my wife every night until I love her. And we just know that we have started a great troop of family members who are members of the church, and we're so grateful for them. And I know that I find a place somewhere in the kingdom because of this, and I just know the church is true. And that all these wonderful grandchildren and children I have that also believe that, I believe that we started it. And I love them very much. And just wouldn't have it any other way. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.